hug you. What? What if your government tries to throw you in a camp? What? You're gonna want a shotgun. Oh. What? One automatic rifle. And a lot of ammo. A gun? Yeah, a gun.
We're all set to riot. Buy a gun. Before you lose your Second Amendment. Buy a gun. They'll burn you out like a Waco. They'll stick your ass in a camp. Jack for the cops in riot gear. Gonna kick your ass and laugh. The revolution is on its way. Better lock and load your AK. Buy a gun, 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 buy a gun before you wish you bought a gun. Buy a gun, 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 buy a gun before you wish you bought a gun. We're all set to riot. Buy a gun. Before you lose your Second Amendment. Buy a gun. They gave your money to the banksters. They stole your pension funds. It's time that we took to the streets. It's time we had our turn. A revolution is on its way, and the founding fathers would say, buy a gun, 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 buy a gun before you wish you bought a gun. Buy a gun, 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 buy a gun before you wish you bought a gun. You gotta riot in the streets. Revolution's not clean and neat. You gotta riot in the streets. Revolution's not clean and neat. You gotta drag them through the streets.
It is Tuesday. We are live. This is PrimerTime. My name is Michael.
I'm Nick, and welcome to the post-Super Bowl edition of PrimerTime. And Michael, we have a special guest with us tonight. Let me introduce you to Oddball.
Hey guys,
Oddball, welcome.
how's it going? Thanks for having me on.
All right.
Good to hear you, man. Everybody, Oddball is a good friend of the show. Good friend of my brother's. I feel a personal thank and a personal debt to this man for helping keep my brother in line when he's overseas doing things for the Empire. So thank you guys.
No problem. I think Oddball helped me out on more than one occasion with a broken arm, and maybe once, maybe twice. I don't know, but definitely helped me out through my shoulder fiasco. So
There were a few times leaving the bar that I don't remember, and somehow made it back to my room safely, and I owe that to you, Nick. I appreciate it. Thanks, buddy.
not a problem. Not a problem. So Michael, have you had a chance to go out and do anything firearms related over the weekend?
Oh, I did a little bit. I got to go to a gun show on Sunday before the Super Bowl, and I'll tell you what, it was probably a little less predictable than the Super Bowl. And I got to go shoot a little bit the other day. Just about 40 rounds, nothing much. Just went with a friend just to try out new settings on his scope, and
That's not bad.
just
What
went out.
were you guys shooting?
We were shooting into the pond with using beer cans and assorted bottles and other trash as targets. And I know that sounds horrible, but it's not really a pond. It's a depression in the dump that was filled with rainwater. So that's the way life is. Some things are polluted and get shot at.
Well, that would just kind of rule out Congress, I guess, huh?
You know what, Nick? I would almost agree with you, except for, I just can't find 535 rounds of 22 long rifle.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, I didn't get a chance to do any kind of shooting-related sports, but I did get a chance to open up the gun safe and run some cleaning patches down a couple of the barrels. So nobody barrels for me, thanks. Oddball, what did you get a chance to do this weekend?
Well, unfortunately, I didn't get to fire off any rounds or clean any mud out of my barrel, but I did get to watch the Super Bowl. It was one hell of a game, I tell you what.
Yeah, I tell you what, I agree with you in the sense that, I was going for the earthquake to really swallow the University of Phoenix Stadium. Could care less about either team, but I certainly have no love for the Patriots, but I hate the Seahawks a hell of a lot more. So, I just didn't want to see another year of the Seahawks gloating, and thank goodness that didn't come to pass.
Well, gentlemen, I'm going to have to be honest with you. And quite frank, I watched none of the Super Bowl, and I actually had only remembered or was reminded that Seattle was in the NFC. The last time I watched football, Seattle was in the AFC. And
Not only was it the AFC, they were in the AFC West, and Dave Craig was the quarterback. So
I'm telling you, this is a long time ago, and I think I've seen through that game already. So, I actually enjoyed the gun show a hell of a lot more than any Super Bowl related stuff. There was no Illuminati halftime sacrifice at the gun show.
That's cool. Well, what was on the chopping block?
There was quite a bit. I'll tell you the price range on the newer items once again was probably 10 to 15% lower, maybe 10 to 30% lower in some cases than used items. Didn't seem to be a lot of people coming in carrying things to trade off or to barter with, and more to the point, I don't think that people were aware that you can do that. I think that's why people don't necessarily do it a lot. I don't think they're aware that you can approach somebody in a gun show who's got a rifle slung or a pistol on his hip and say, "Hey, what you got there, pal?" You know?
Yeah, it's actually kind of it's kind of a different thing. I think a lot of folks out there kind of are under the assumption that you're not allowed to do person-to-person sales at a gun show if you don't have a table there. I mean, I think some people actually think that the organizers of the event have that written into the bylaws and code of conduct for sellers, is that you actually have to have a table.
It's not necessarily that something that the promoters of the show put out there that it's encouraged. And I'm not saying that they're discouraging it for some sort of nefarious gun control reason. I truly think they're doing it. They're not promoting that aspect of it because, well, it costs $80 to get a table for the weekend.
Right. So and you are invested if you get a table. I mean, for nothing else, if you got to make that $80 back.
It had 350 tables. I would dare say. So at $80 a table, that's a little bit more important and more guaranteed income because these guys do it every weekend. They travel basically almost like Barney's. That's a little more dependable than the $5 entry fee that you're going to get on Super Bowl Sunday. To be honest with you, it was fairly packed while I was there.
Yeah. Well, Oddball, do you have a chance to go out and see anything in your area in terms of like how frequently do you ever hear about gun shows going on where you're at?
Well, where I'm at, there's God-fearing men there, and they love their guns. I won't say exactly where I'm at, but
you mean bitter clingers?
Yeah. However, there are quite a few shows around. I've not yet to attend one, but I hear they are great.
Oh, that's good.
You were the best beef jerky ever at them.
That's right.
It's interesting. I actually heard of one finally in the in the 7 months that I've been here. I heard of one in my area about 2 counties away. So I was extremely surprised, and I didn't get a chance to attend. I think that had I had that opportunity, it would be a totally eye-opening experience to see how these folks do it here. So knowing that I'm in the land of shotguns and not much else, I'm pretty sure that's what would have been on the chopping block.
Well, I think you'd be surprised because in my area we have everything for sale, and it appears at gun shows that the things that people bring in to sell person to person, or if a private party has a table, appear to be seasonal items. So, maybe towards the end of hunting season, you won't see as many rifles and shotguns. You'll end up seeing, the modern sporting rifles. You'll see more of the handgun market opening up.
Yeah. Well, Oddball, I talked to you a couple days ago, and you brought up a firearm that I'd like to get a little bit more info and certainly your take on it. Why don't you go ahead and tell us about it?
Yeah, so pending the household 6 or the wife's approval, I think my next battle rifle I'd like to get is a M1A Scout by a Springfield Armory, their 7.62 type. I been looking at this rifle for quite some time, and I just think the ballistics of the 7.62 is meant for many different purposes, and I think that that is the route I'm going to take.
I think that's a pretty stout round. I mean, not a lot of folks actually invest the money into something like an M1A or an M1A1 or any of the SOCOM variants of the M14 series rifle.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's going to be something that you're really going to enjoy. And are you planning on taking the income tax, or as we know about it, the return called gun money to do this?
Unfortunately, no. We have plenty of other plans for that. However, I do have other ways of funding.
You totally need new IKEA furniture, man.
That's okay.
Totally need new furniture.
I tell you what.
Listen, let me interrupt you, gentlemen, for a second. We're getting into something that I've run into a problem with this. We're starting to use a lot of nomenclature and a lot of acronyms for things. People may not know what the M14 or the M1A Scout is. Give it a description of what the rifle is. Is it a bolt action? Is it a semi-automatic? Is it a full automatic? Well, how does this rifle work?
It is a semi-automatic version of the M14, commonly used in, I believe it was in Korea and mostly popular in Vietnam as a sniper rifle of sorts. Wood stock. Now they make them synthetic. They have 18-inch, 16-inch, 12-inch. Magazine fed. Yeah, I'm sorry. Magazine fed.
Yeah. What would be the magazine capacities on this that would come with this rifle if you purchased it new?
I believe it comes with a 10, but they do have 20 round magazines that you can get for about $20 or so.
That's fairly economical because 20 rounds of sporting ammunition for the Indian 7.62 is probably going to be about $1 a round.
That's correct. That's the only downside.
Well, when you
are you finding much surplus ammunition in that caliber in your area that kind of supports that?
Not so much in my area. We'll have to drive a little ways to find that ammunition. However, thank God for the internet. I've been able to find quite a few websites that have it for a little bit less than $1 a round.
That's not bad. Would you say that there is a plethora of websites that you can find this on?
I would say there is a plethora.
All
yes.
right.
Hefe.
Thank you very much. So yeah, actually,
No,
I think.
Let me ask you another question real quick, because Nick, you and I had this conversation, and our answers were significantly different. Chris, how far do you think? Excuse me, I'm fired. I'm fired. I gave away the secret. Let me ask, how far would you drive? What's the outer limit of your time frame? Miles or time? I am so sorry.
I would probably drive about a good 2.5 hours, if needed. Anything further than that, require a kitchen pass.
I understand that. Okay.
Yeah, I think that location and the area where you're at has a lot to do with it. For me, an hour and a half doesn't get you very far. In a place like Texas, an hour and a half, you could almost be still in the same county.
That's very true.
So when you take a look at it, I think the going rate is just like Oddball said. You're going to have anywhere from $1 to $1.10 to 90 cents being the mean average of what that round costs. But then you're also going to take a look at what type of ammunition you're going to feed it. So are you going to feed it something that's a hunting round? Are you looking at like Federal lead point? Or are you talking just
Remington Hog Hammer and 7.62? That stuff is the bomb, and it's $1.30 a piece.
Yeah. Well, you can always go a little bit more expensive and get the Ted Nugent Whitetail Madness or whatever they're calling it this week.
Or you could get the RIP G2 from G2 Labs or whatever they're called. That stuff was $6 a round at the show.
Jesus, that's crazy.
Yeah, a box of 20 was $120. So it was I don't know who'd buy that crap, but whatever.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what.
Dan's prediction that 22 long rifle at 10 cents a round was going to be about the new normal, and I think he's kind of somewhat on the money there.
I think so, but I
It's
think
about
that when it comes down to 7.62 by 5.1, which is that's just the NATO nomenclature for the commercials 308 Winchester.
Right.
You're gonna see at some point with the amount of ammunition that is being produced, not only here in the United States, but in areas that are doing business with the United States that have had their actions from old war type rifles that are converted. Take for instance, you've got something called the Spanish FR8, and this is a semi-automatic action, and it actually, no, I'm sorry, this is a bolt action that was originally started as an 8mm Mauser that through the La Coruña Fábrica de Armas in northwestern Spain converted those barrels and those actions to 308 Winchester. So those plants are still making ammunition. You're going to see it getting loaded on a lot of different folks that belong to NATO.
That's an interesting move. Was Spain a NATO partner at that time?
Absolutely not, because this was during the 70s, and I believe that Spain didn't join NATO until about 1987 or 1982, somewhere in that 5-year period.
That's a pretty interesting movement in direction of ammunition in Europe at that time.
Exactly, and that's one of the things that a lot of folks kind of don't know is that the Spanish Civil War, which happened in the early 30s, was the testing ground for a lot of the German arms that were produced in the late 30s and early 40s. So to have those converted from that original chambering to 308, I think that was actually kind of ingenious, keeping those arms available to be able to be used, and those plants still have to manufacture that ammunition. So I think for oddball purposes, you don't have to necessarily go out and get Federal Power Shock or whatever that's out there. You can be just as fine happy throwing something that's been in you produced at a factory in Romania, because it's all going to get chewed up the same way.
Well, now I'm going to have to take exception to that. In the past, I owned Fabrique FAL, which means Fusil Auto Léger, I believe.
Yes, from our friends.
And that was right, and that was actually called the right arm of the Western world, or the free world, or something like that, by several scholars who I don't even know their names or something. I think I saw it on History Channel. But that was chambered in 7.62 by 5.1, and I've used ammunition made in India. I don't think it was the Isopor factory, but it was in 300-round battle packs. And I'll tell you, I had an abysmal number of failures, and just the ammunition itself was, I would say I would probably, out of a 300-round battle pack, I would say I probably culled at least 9-10 rounds out of it that were, the bullet was not placed right. It was not square and true in the case.
Yeah.
And I had a large number of failures in it. And it was, sealed battle pack in like MRE bag type plastic.
Yeah. Well, when you take a look at it, obviously manufacturing standards are not the same the world over. So I think that, that's one variable right there that you can take into account. But what you do have, and I think Oddball will agree in that Springfield Armory, they come out of Croatia. Mm-hmm. And they have some pretty exacting standards. Anybody with pretty much any Springfield Armory piece knows that they hold their value, and they do what they're designed to do. And what that is.
So this rifle was actually made in Croatia. I was under the impression it would have been made at the Springfield plant in the United States.
No.
Unfortunately not.
Springfield XD series, which is based on the old HS 2000 out of Croatia. I do know that those are made in Croatia, it's stamped made in Croatia. I was not aware that the M1s and the M14s from Springfield were made in Croatia. That is shocking to me.
Yeah, so you learn something new every day.
Does Springfield make anything in the United States anymore? Do they make 1911s in the United States?
That I couldn't tell you, but I know that the actual company, Springfield Armory, comes out of Croatia. So
I know all their XD pistols do come out of Croatia.
Certainly, yeah.
Those are copies of the pistol, the HS 2000. I think it was Husvarsky Suprata or something like that.
Havratska.
Right, yes.
We do have Croatian friends of the show, A big shout out to my good friend Darko Juric. And actually, Springfield Armory was shut down by the government in 1968. They cited some budgetary concerns, and they went ahead and were actually kind of they regenerated the name Springfield Armory, but a family by the name of Reese bought it out and took it to Croatia.
Well, we see it. We see a parallel with this now with Kalashnikov concern, just basically licensing the name to RWC Manufacturing. So, all right. So, I mean, that being said, the XD series of pistols are wonderful. Those are excellent pistols, by the way.
I concur. Yeah, beautiful.
I will say that it looks like the for the M1A, the SOCOM variant, they brought that out in 2005, and I think the model that Oddball is talking about, this is a new model.
Yes, it was coming between their full length model and their SOCOM model. So it gives you I believe I want to say a 16-inch barrel as opposed to the 18. Yeah, I'm not sure exactly when that came out though.
So and that's going to have some basically some standard components of what would be considered to be a scout rifle. So we're talking probably in the 7 to 9 pound weight range. Open sights. I'm assuming.
Yes.
Okay, so you're definitely going to have a flash hider on there, and can you go into a little detail about what the stock configuration is for the one that you're looking at specifically?
Stock configuration. So you got different. They offer like 3 different models. They got the walnut stock, which that rifle's going to end up weighing about 12 to 13 pounds before you throw some ammo in there. Then you got they have the dark earth tone, and they got the green foliage composite stock, which is more likely what I'll be going with.
Cool. Okay. And the benefit
will give you so much weight.
Yeah, definitely you want to reduce the weight, and that's what the polymer is good for. But also, you've got some purists out there that insist on having a wood stock. I kind of actually see it from the other perspective of, if you've got something that's in a polymer stock, not only is it lighter to carry and less weight on you for the duration of the time that you're out and about, but you don't have to really worry about dinging up that pretty wood. And that's one of the things that I think that a lot of folks get hung up on, especially when it comes down to selling firearms.
Yeah, honestly, I love the wood stock look. I love the way it looks. It's just when it ounces equal pounds, pounds equal pain. That old adage. So if you are carrying this rifle for a long period of time and you got that wood stock, you're definitely going to feel that. So they came out before polymer. They came out with this fiberglass type stock that they used to put on rifles, and that was kind of like the way of the future for this polymer stock. And so therefore, it's come a long way as far as reliability and strength for that weapon. So you're going to fire millions of rounds before these polymer stocks fail. Glock is a test to that. So is Springfield, like we just got through talking about the XD model. So the reliability. I know there's guys that want that wood stock because it feels more solid to them.
Exactly. And not only that, I think that it's a trade-off in terms of what your shoulder is going to be able to handle. I actually have quite a few rifles in varying calibers, one of them being .308 Winchester, and I will tell you that I like to fire that a lot better than I like to fire the 30-06. And that's one of the things when you look at it ballistically, the 30-06 was replaced by the 7.62. So there's a reason for it, and I think that you're going to see much better or more consistent performance with factory loaded ammunition out of a rifle chambered in the 308 Winchester load as compared to the 30-06.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, I think the change in ammunition came about primarily due to change in fighting styles. The 306 is wonderful if you've got to knock a guy off a horse at 600 yards, but it's not really quite as wonderful if you got to carry them through a jungle.
Certainly, and here's the thing. We have varied and often changing types of warfare You've seen in the last 14 years that our country has been at war. There's been quite a bit of debate about whether or not the 5.56 round has enough stopping power. And Oddball, I think you've got some interesting perspective on that.
Yeah. I've seen it work. I've made it work overseas. In fact, um, it is a one of the better rounds. And when you have a 68-ton beast carrying your ammo for you, those ounces really don't matter too much.
So that's a good thing. In other words, it's better to ride when you don't have to walk. So
That's right. Why walk when you can ride?
there you go. And that right there is why any heavy division in the Army has the most weight. And we're not talking about in the size of the vehicles. We're talking about the size of the soldiers.
And spouses.
Yeah.
Depend upon
Yeah,
us.
enjoy the
There
couch
you go.
tonight, gentlemen. Enjoy the couch.
There you go. I'll tell you what, you don't get over to the commissary on Tuesdays without knowing where to find the good stuff.
Oh, jeez. Gotta love that deli section.
There you go. So I'll tell you what. Let me. It's interesting. We talk here week in and week out about some things that being able to hold a firearm and knowing how to use it can come in handy. In my neighborhood, there was a couple of posts on social media about a guy or couple of guys, being a guy and a girl, that were perpetrating themselves as home security. Basically, they're independent consultants for ADT, is what they're advertising. So that's one of the things that can easily lead to a home invasion kind of situation. And that's for me, that's like, hey, if it can happen in a small town in the United States, you certainly understand that it's going to happen in bigger towns.
I believe it will happen in the small town in the United States precisely because it is the small town in the United States. The traditional small town in the United States is, you don't have to lock your door every time you run down to the corner store or something. If you're going to your neighbor's house, you don't lock your car in the driveway every night. That has been taken over by the unsavory elements in larger cities who have the means to get to the smaller towns now.
Right.
So it behooves you to prepare yourself for these eventualities.
Yeah, and it's funny because where I'm at, I'm in a fairly rural area. We do have a small city nearby, but this is a place where actually I've seen notices posted by the police that there are guys that ride the rails, and they go from town to town, and they get off and knock over a convenience store here and there and get on the rails and go to the next town and do the same thing. So just take a hit lesson from that, and be sure that you're able to protect yourself, your family, your property, and be safe doing it.
Don't trust door-to-door ADT salesmen.
Exactly.
I wouldn't trust any door-to-door art salesman either. There has been a rash that art sales throughout the United States and Canada. They'll come and they'll case primarily people who may have access or knowledge of access to sensitive areas. And it turns out they're Israelis. And they come in, they try to sell art, and it's well documented. It's out there. If you doubt me, Google search Israeli art students, and you'll see they've been arrested. That's one of the options out there in the door-to-door threat world right there.
Yeah, I think that there's quite a bit of that. Oddball like myself have served our country not only on the front lines of combat, but also we've served our country in front lines of America in terms of recruiting for our service. And one of the things that I learned while I was recruiting for America's Army in the San Francisco Bay Area was that when you go to the mall and you see those folks selling the Dead Sea facial scrub and the head, the
Zoom copter.
Yep.
A Zoom copter as well.
A lot of those folks are coming from a certain Middle Eastern democracy. It's kind of interesting. Did you have that experience there, Oddball?
Oh, exact same experience. Yeah, you nailed it on the head. They're everywhere and selling those Dead Sea salts to you.
Yeah, they will. I'll tell you what, they feel good on your head, but they don't feel good when they rip the money out of your wallet. That's for sure.
I'll tell you, this is just kind of an aside. Where our mother lives, and I went and visited her a few years back, and she, upon arrival, she had told me that she had made an appointment for somebody to come out and to do some work on the house. And I had just got there. I was tired. Okay, that's fine. Um, Turns out she was having some locks repaired on the house, and lo and behold, it was an Israeli that showed up to change the locks.
Yeah, how convenient.
I think it's kind of interesting. He was an immigrant. He spoke very, very little English, and he took an awful long time to change a lock on a door.
Hmm. Interesting.
Which I had no idea. If I had known exactly that's what was going on, I would have dealt with it. But I came in late, and she was off early for the next day, and there wasn't we didn't get to that portion of the conversation.
Yeah. Well,
So I just find it interesting that there's always an access point for them.
Well, Michael, I wanted to bring up some of the news stories that we've kind of talked about in the last couple of hours. One of them being the idea that the mayors against illegal guns and the guy who runs that organization himself, Mayor Bloomberg, kind of just believes that everybody should believe that he does in terms of the necessity of gun control. Turns out that one of his initiatives, the organization, or what they call it, the Organizing for America, the International Peace Institute, and Everytown for Gun Safety, uh, sent somebody to go bark up the wrong tree when it came to pushing the gun control line. Basically, what it is a woman named Ann Wright, who is a public policy director for the Everytown for Gun Safety, the Michael Bloomberg sponsored initiative, tried to reach out to Jenny Cochran, who is a sister of a domestic violence victim from a estranged husband who actually by just happens to be a prohibited person. He was a felon who had his did not have his rights restored, and this guy basically killed Jenny Cochran's sister. And when she was contacted by the organization, seeking if they could get her support for gun control, she said the only thing that would have saved my sister would have been if she would have had a gun. Seeing as the gentleman that killed her was a felon and was already not permitted to own firearms. And I think that's an important piece, is that there is no law that would have been able to be enacted that would have prevented this guy from doing what he was going to do. There are laws on the books already. If
There's
Senator,
thousands of laws on the books, and criminals are always going to criminal because that's what they do.
that's what they do, and that's what they know. And not only that, they know that it's much more easier for them to commit a crime when there's a lot of laws that are basically looked at as red tape. So, in the sense that this individual,
One, it's much easier for the criminal to commit the crime if the victim is unable or unwilling to fight back. And
exactly.
the gun control laws have left people unable to fight back. And as a consequence, a lot of people unable to fight back have looked back looked to the police or to the authorities uh, for safety and protection, which in my mind makes them unwilling to fight for their own safety.
Well, and there is a certain element of that, but you got to wonder at what point is that a learned behavior, or is that a deeply held belief?
I think it's not necessarily a learned behavior. I think it's a bred trait.
Exactly, exactly. So there's a very, very powerful lobby out there, and you'd be surprised to see who's funding it, but they have the message that's starting to resonate in terms of how they're going to go ahead and pursue the agenda. And the agenda is, it's the same thing that you see in a lot of different things in the political realm, is that you can't push a sea change all at once. It has to be taken in baby steps. And at first it starts with background checks, and then it's ultimately confiscation. So when you think of the children, and you go off and you make sure that everybody has to let their chief of police know when they're going to go ahead and remove their weapon from the police armory. That is not all that far away. Look to our friends up in the north in Canada. They have to do that. And only recently did their parliament decide, hey, you know what, this national background check and firearms registry is absolutely worthless.
Well, they still have the background check in Canada. Canada has what they call a possession and acquisition license, and that would entail somebody to buy ammunition and a long gun. Now, if you want to get a handgun in Canada, there's several different classes. There's things that are not available in Canada that are readily available here. Conversely, there are things that are readily available in Canada that are not available here. There's several different licensing requirements, and if you wish to get a handgun in Canada, it's completely different than getting a handgun in the United States. And as the song says, buy a gun, and I've espoused this since the day that the show started, everybody should own a handgun. If anything else, it is your last best way to say, no, I do not comply.
Well, Oddball, what are you looking at in terms of your area? And I know that you said that it seems like the ability to have a firearm is highly encouraged out there. But what is your take on what the public perception is out there?
Oh, it's exactly that. Everyone is encouraged to have a firearm. And fortunately, I'm in a place where, active duty military, whether any branch of military, the state governor said if you were active duty military with your ID, you can conceal carry, and everyone's for that. So thankfully, I'm in a place where I do believe that these gun restrictive laws that are being taken baby step wise this will be the last place that will happen. I'm almost certain.
Oh, that's a good thing for you.
Well, yeah, but I don't plan on staying here, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's good while it lasts.
Well, I'll tell you.
Good.
You have to be cautious with the promises of politicians and the perceived will of the people. In my state, I live in the state of Texas, and recently we've had the discussion basically on a statewide level as to whether or not we're going to have open carry in the state of Texas. And it became a very contentious issue during the last gubernatorial election. And the Republican candidate, Greg Abbott, won. And he said that he would firmly support open carry, and when the bill was presented to him, he would sign it. Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick said the exact same thing and actually went further than the governor candidate and now governor-elect said. And he claimed to be a champion of the Second Amendment, champion of open carry, of constitutional carry, and the restoration of rights to Texans. Well, he flipped. Nick, in the middle of our last show, the post State of the Onion address by your boss, he flipped and he said that open carry in the state of Texas is not a priority for this legislative session.
Oh,
now, this causes much consternation and grief amongst the law-abiding people of Texas and the people who wish to see open constitutional carry brought to the state. So it caused a lot of uproar. And like the politician that he is, and let me also remind you, he's a goddamn attorney, he walked back and he said, well, I didn't really mean to say that it wasn't a priority. I just mean that I just mean to say whatever gets me reelected. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
So there's snakes everywhere. Do not believe a goddamn word these sons of bitches say.
And Michael, you touched on something that was very relevant to the conversation, specifically dealing with the will of the people. During the last election cycle, our friends in Colorado, good Bronco loving folk out there, they decided that they were going to recall a couple of state senators who really pushed the firearms control acts that went through a couple years ago. We got an update on some of the status that actually went through the Colorado State Legislature. They're in their House of Representatives for Colorado. They had House Bill 1050, and this was a bill that would repeal the requirement for anyone besides a licensed gun dealer to transfer or possess a firearm must obtain a background check. This was defeated 6-5. So
So very, very close.
very, very close, but they didn't get enough votes to pull back.
Now, Colorado has a governor who has a habit of flip flopping on this issue, right? Governor Lickenpoop, Hickenlooper.
You mean Hickenlooper, former mayor of Denver, and he's not flip flopping on anything except for his insistence that he didn't do enough research into the legalization of marijuana in his state. That's the only thing I've heard him flop back.
He flip flopped on the firearms issue, on the magazine ban and the background checks, and specifically on the magazine bans. He spoke to a meeting of the sheriffs, and he said that, well, I didn't really think it through, and blah blah blah. And I'm sorry, yeah, it was a bad law. And that was caught on tape. And once again, like a true politician, a few days later, well, I didn't really mean what I said.
Well, not only that, yeah. So you take it a step further. This was called the Magpul bill. This was House Bill 1009, and it would repeal the ban on possession of large capacity ammunition magazines. This was also defeated 6-5. So a lot of these bills that were pursued were basically split along party lines. You can see every single one of them, with the exception of one of them in the House, and then the ones in the Senate. They were all defeated 6-5, and I can say it doesn't look good for folks in Colorado that want to have their right to own firearms of their choosing restored.
Well, not only the firearms, but the so-called high-capacity magazines, which they're not actually high-capacity magazines; they're standard capacity magazines.
Exactly. And that's why I said this is the Magpul Act. Everybody's pretty well aware that Magpul Industries, which is headquartered in Erie, Colorado, has made plans to relocate due to the fact that Colorado, in short fashion, decided to really take their opportunity to conduct business in the state of Colorado right out from under them. So this is not a company that employs thousands of employees, but it is a company that decided to, hey, we're going to pull up stakes and we're going to move out of your state. There's been quite a few firearms companies that have moved from the Northeast United States to areas that do say, hey, we want your business. And I know that's one of the things that Rick Perry in Texas was making every pitch about being business friendly to Texas in terms of offering incentives for people to bring their business to Texas. And certainly when it came to firearms, I know that he was very active in pursuing those companies.
And definitely in New York. Yep.
So we've got some firearms makers up there in Ilion, New York. Anybody's and I think it's a Winchester fan, or yeah.
Well, and Ithaca is a New York product. I mean, Ithaca is a city in New York.
Yeah, certainly, but
Henry rifles were made in New York. Another just a few miles north of there, you move into Connecticut and Massachusetts. Well, I mean, that's Gun Valley right there. That's the home of Colt. That's the home of Bushmaster.
Exactly.
And Springfield is there.
Yeah. So here's one. Just to finish out with Colorado, one thing that actually passed in their Senate was Senate Bill 32. And this allows a person who can legally possess a handgun under state and federal law to carry a concealed handgun in Colorado without a permit. That passed 3-2, and I think that while being disappointed in the overall status of those gun related bills, I mean that's a small consolation, but at least something there passed.
I'll tell you what, the right to carry a concealed weapon as a constitutional right, that's a pretty big step. Open carry is nice. Constitutional carry in the concealed like that's a pretty close second. And I'd take that as opposed to having another magazine ban or some god awful crap like that.
Yeah, I tell you what, it's interesting because we hear about it, from time to time, depending upon what state you're at. Everything is based on whatever the tragedy of the moment is, and how quickly the operatives can seize that opportunity to get a message out. And there's a shooting every day in the United States.
Let's just, as we take and with the adage of never let a crisis go to waste. Thank you, Mossad Agent Rahm Emanuel, Mayor of Chicago. We look at Chicago, where this statement emanates from. Chicago every week goes for the high score.
Yeah, but that's because Black Lives Matter.
That's what it appears to be at this point, isn't it?
That's right, because I could tell you what, you could read off the names that sound like the offensive line for the Bears, and it's all dead black youths in Chicago. So, if Black Lives Matter in that city for his honor, why does he have such a problem?
I would think that Black Lives Matter to his honor, the Honorable Mossad Agent Mayor of Chicago. Black lives only matter when they're taken by a officer or a non-black.
Well, certainly.
That's the only time Black lives matter in Chicago.
So here's my question, and Oddball, feel free to jump in. You've got the chief prosecutor, law enforcement officer in our country, who has basically instigated what a lot of people would consider to be racial derision, and his department has conducted 2 separate investigations on the death in New York for the one individual who was selling untaxed cigarettes, as well as
that was Eric Garner, who actually hadn't been selling any cigarettes. He stopped a fight. He had a history of selling cigarettes, but he wasn't arrested for selling cigarettes at that time. It stopped a fight before that had happened.
Yeah, I'm just telling you what the media slant is on it there. So
okay, sorry.
With that, and then you also have the gentleman from St. Louis who was the gentle giant who had not just knocked off a convenience store and strong arm robbery, but when the Justice Department goes out there and conducts those investigations and finds that the officers acted appropriately and in accordance with established protocols, it's quite a bit different than what the narrative was in the weeks leading up to the grand juries coming back with a no true bill finding. So
then you also have to look at the delay in the no true bill finding. That a grand jury doesn't meet for 3 weeks to decide one case. That's unheard of. That's an insane amount of time. That was to build the pressure because, you don't let a crisis go to waste. So this is building a crisis you can use.
And when you think about it, Chicago is Washington, D.C., is New York City, is any major city where the narrative has been, firearms kill regardless of who it is. And certainly in the hands of police, firearms kill the innocent or those who haven't had a trial by a jury of their peers. Well, here's the bottom line, folks. I think that there was a period of time where you could have a reasonable expectation of catching a couple bullets from police if you did stupid shit. I will tell you from personal experience, having witnessed this in Las Vegas, Nevada, you don't do stupid shit like that with the cops there, because in that jurisdiction, the law enforcement shoots first and really doesn't even bother to ask questions. Because by the time that they're shooting, they've already made up their mind that what they're doing is right, and they've got the support of their basically their mayor and the city councils and the county supervisors. It's a totally different scenario, and like I said, you've got bad apples in every bunch, no matter what organization it is. You basically,
Nick, I hate to disagree with you on this. I hate the adage of there's a few bad apples in every bunch. These are people that we hire to be basically our protectors.
Well, I don't think that we hire them to be our protectors.
It was the motto on the police car for a long time. It was to protect and serve. It's no longer there anymore. So you're absolutely right. They're not there to protect us anymore.
Yeah, those were different times. And certainly,
right, one out of 12. Yeah. 1 out of 12. We do not have a taser.
That was before the biggest threat to American domestic situation was a returning veteran. So that tells you
this is exactly what I'm getting at, Nick. If these few bad apples aren't cleaned out by the good apples in the bunch, it's really not a comparison of apples. It's more like a few squirts of diarrhea in the milk.
Yeah, Yeah, well, you should, when life gives you diarrhea, you make chocolate milk with it, right?
The whole bunch. It taints the whole bunch. You just can't pick them out, because if there are so-called good officers out there, and I truly believe that there are, my biggest question is, why are you not stopping your fellow officers who are committing these atrocities? And that's basically what they are: it's atrocities against the American people.
Yeah, but
now
there are atrocities that I don't think you can even see that they're atrocities, because number one, words have meaning, and I think that when you look up the definition of an atrocity, I don't think that you can call a shooting of one person an atrocity. I think that we have to keep things in perspective, and I think
I'll go with that. I will go with that.
So,
but there's a way to stop this outpouring of bad faith by the police on the American people, and it's a very, very simple. It's a very simple cure, which actually benefits the American people in more than one way, and that is to quit making the lawsuit against the violent cop or the officer who violates his oath to the people. Quit making that be a burden upon the city that he works for. He did it. Make him pay for it.
Oh, but that's the thing. There's no money. There's no money in that individual officer.
Wait, there is. But wait, there is. Because when he's out of money, then you attack the great big retirement fund. And every state police force has a large retirement fund. You attach that. And I'll tell you what, there ain't going to be nothing stopping a rookie 21-year-old cop who's really hot with a taser and a baton and has got a 9mm and can't wait to use it. Nothing's going to stop him better than a 53-year-old cop who's about ready to retire and says, "You do not fuck up my retirement bass boat, young man."
Yeah.
But stop it.
When there is no fear of that actually happening, you're not gonna see that take place.
We have what we have today.
Exactly. So what I'm trying to get at is that we brought it up a couple times in conversation outside of the show. Not long ago in the great state of Georgia, there was a couple of Russians who were caught and apprehended by local law enforcement trying to break into a water treatment plant. And I would say that 20 years ago, maybe even 30 years ago, I don't think that those two gentlemen would ever see the light of day. But in 2013 or 2012, when this occurred, they were given personal recognizance bonds and told to return to court on a certain day. I lost my faith in Georgia law enforcement at that point.
But Nick, is that very surprising? I mean, considering that on 9/11, the day of our history, of our current history, that puts us exactly where we are right now. The only 5 people arrested on that day, in regards to that, the 5 dancing Israelis. Please Google search the dancing Israelis. You may be shocked and dismayed. But the only 5 people arrested that day were quietly shipped to Israel about a month and a half later.
Yeah. That's one of those
problem.
That's one of those things. But like I said, Oddball, what do you think? What is your impression of law enforcement out there where you're at? I mean, do you figure that those folks are there to, inhibit or otherwise inhibit your rights as a citizen to hold a firearm, or do you think that they're actually out there, doing their part to keep people safe and provide for the common good? What's your take on it?
Well, I will tell you this: I try to stay away from them as much as possible and out of their view, and
you don't abide. When an officer behind you when you're on the highway or in town making a right turn, you don't feel lovingly protected.
I think he's the wrong color to feel fear, but
well, I'm not the one that goes out there and does all this crazy, law breaking and whatnot, but. I respect them. They don't carry a weapon for my protection. They carry it for their own protection. But I really don't,
Don't poke the bear, as we say.
Yeah.
Don't poke the bear. Well, Michael, let's go ahead and let's cover the 4 rules of firearm safety.
This is the most important part of the night, gentlemen. First rule of firearm safety: every firearm is loaded until you visually and physically verify that it is not loaded. Rule number 2: please do not sweep anybody with the muzzle. Keep it pointed in a safe direction. I was at a gun show this weekend, and I saw that numerous times. Heartbreaking. Rule number 3, know what your target is, know what is beyond your target. Do not shoot the little boy on a bicycle 2 blocks down the road when you're trying to hit a pop can in your front yard. And rule number 4, the most important rule, which is violated once again a bajillion times at the gun show this weekend: keep your booger hook off the bang switch until you are ready to discharge it. I don't care if the gun is unloaded, blah, 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 whatever. Keep your booger hook off the bang switch until you are ready to fire the weapon.
Yeah, because it's not an accidental discharge. It is negligent, and it's quite different than a dishonorable discharge when you get caught with a fat girl at the fair. So make sure that you're doing the right thing at all times, because people are watching you, and not only that, kids are learning from you, and especially those who may have never been exposed to a firearm. So you practice those 4 rules of firearm safety, and you're going to be in good shape.
Well, I believe the booger hook on the bang switch, nothing happens until you pull that trigger.
Yep.
So.
Yep. So, Oddball, do you have a negligent discharge story that you'd care to regale us with?
Thank God I do not have a negligent discharge story for you.
Well, one of my favorites. I know that you and I were downrange at different times. One of mine happens to be the don't use the 50 cal round as a hammer story, and. Yeah, you can go ahead and use the search engine of your choice and bring up the U.S. Army safety message circa 2006 that shows a badly mangled hand that decided to catch the business end of a 50 cal round that was being used inappropriately.
Nice.
Primer struck something that was just enough to set it off, and yeah, the soldier's probably out of the service. So. Yeah. It doesn't just have to be, you pulling a trigger at the wrong time or unintended time. It could be mishandling of the ammunition or the firearm itself. So certainly take your time to understand your firearm, know its limitations, know your own limitations, and certainly take every precaution that you can when it comes to safe storage of that firearm.
Absolutely. Thank you, Nick. That was wonderful said. I just shuddered to think that guy's lost. A guy who's going to use a 50 caliber round as a hammer probably used his dominant hand to do it with.
I'm going to guess it was his right hand. So
I would almost imagine that boy used to be right-handed.
Yeah. Well, he used to have 5 fingers too. So
it's called natural selection as well. So
yeah, there you go. Well, I'll tell you what, we've got a great bunch of listeners out there on UCY.tv. It's a great platform. Our listenership seems to be going up every week, and I just want to say thanks to the folks that are following us week in and week out. And if you find somebody that's in your area that might benefit from the conversation or giving a listen, I encourage you to go ahead and tell them about us. I want to say a big thank you to Oddball for coming on to us. It's certainly been a pleasure and an honor to be able to have you out here. I know we've talked about it, and it just happened to be fortuitous that we were able to do it this week. So thank you very, very much for coming on.
Well, thanks for the opportunity. I really enjoyed it.
I can't thank you enough for helping take care of my brother over there, man. I truly do appreciate it.
I'm telling you, you took care of me more than. I'm sorry.
No,
I was gonna say he took care of me a lot more than than I took care of him. I definitely have to say that.
It's good times, Michael. It's great to get a chance to talk with you on a weekly basis. I'm real excited about it every week, and hopefully we're going to be able to have some more information for our listeners out there about a new and exciting firearm. And I think I'm going to leave it to you to take us out of here.
I'd like to give it thanks to UCY. Nick, thanks a lot for giving me on with me. Oddball, thank you very much, sir. Everybody, stick around. Lots of good programming on UCY.tv tonight. Thanks, Jules. Thanks for giving us this platform. Everybody, get out there, do what the song says. Fire gun.